Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to go over how to get help when you run into problems, because you will run into problems. You'll run into lots of problems, but the most successful GIS analysts know how to roll through it on their own and help themselves. So this is the most critical skill that you can learn when you're learning GIS. So this lesson is inspired in large part by a similar lesson done by Roger Pang, who does the R programming courses on Coursera. He has a great lesson on getting help in the R community that you should go take a look at if you're interested too. This will cover some of the same stuff, but he has some other good information. So big objectives for this lesson are to help you understand and locate help resources that are available for ArcGIS and for GIS in general, and then learn the components of a good question or bug report. So how can you tell others what's going on in a way that enables them to help you out? So first off, some rules of thumb. You should start by trying to help yourself. Anything you can do to learn more about the problem yourself is going to be better when it comes to giving others a bug report or a description of your problem. You're going to learn a lot more about what's going on. You may solve the problem on your own, and you're going to be far better able to explain to people what's going on so they can help you out. In this particular course, in this specialization, the structure means that instructors aren't always around. You don't necessarily have a classroom level of access to instructors. So you're going to need to learn to convey your problems to your peers over the internet, which is very different than talking to an instructor in person or a peer in person, because you don't have that face-to-face interaction to understand and trust each other's good intentions. So being nice and being very clear in what you're asking for in your help is really critical in these situations. And then asking a friend is really great and is a good way to handle this. If you know somebody else going through the course, call them up. If you have other people who know GIS, contact them and ask them if they can help you solve your problem. But also be respectful of their time, just as you're going to be respectful of other people in this course's time. So the first thing you can do to help yourself, this is where it all starts. Step one, when you run into a problem, is to look at the ArcGIS documentation. It's best in class. It's really good and very thorough documentation. If you're not used to documentation for enterprise level software, you're probably like, I don't need to read help documents because help documents aren't very helpful for me. With ArcGIS, you really should. I can't tell you how many times I've run into a problem and then I go read the documentation and it's a very clearly labeled feature of the tool that I'm running or the thing that I'm doing. Or it's a quirk, but it's known. And once I go read it, problem solved, I know I need to find a workaround or do something else. So go read the documentation. You can get to it through the help menu in ArcMap. And you can also find it via Google search or on Esri's site. They're all very thorough. The next step, after you go through the help documentation, you still don't know what's going on. Okay, let's do some trial and error. It's okay to make mistakes. We just need to do it in a safe situation where you can make mistakes. So whether or not you have a backup software installed, I'd say make a copy of your document and your data. And then let's start playing around with this. So it's safe to mess this up. It's not going to ruin your original project. And you can start trying things that you'd be afraid to try, things you'd be afraid to click on otherwise, and new ways of approaching your problem, and just see what happens. You might find the solution. You're going to learn a lot about GIS in the process. This is how the best analysts learn. And then that trial and error may ultimately get you where you want to go. Or you might find a workaround or something satisfactory. Step two, trial and error didn't solve it. We now have almost no idea what's going on. So step two, use Google, search the internet. And if you're not used to searching for technical problems online, the big thing is you got to be pretty clear with Google about what you're looking for too. You're going to get better search results if you're pretty clear in what's going on. That's kind of an art that you need to learn though. And so I've included some examples on this slide, but rules of thumb, use the error code. So if ArcGIS says error 0514, make sure to put that in the Google search, because other people who've come across this problem before will have put that in their error reports to somebody else when they got their solution. So that's a really important piece. And ArcGIS has in their help documentation error codes and their descriptions. But sometimes the descriptions are pretty cryptic, so you will need to find some other description. And then if there's error text, if there's a description that comes along with your error code by the software, make sure to put as much of that or the most unique part of that into your search terms, because that's also potentially going to pop up when somebody else posted a very similar problem. And then make sure to put the software name and version number. So for example, ArcGIS 10.2, software version number, select by location crash. I'm saying the select by location tool, which you'll learn what that is later in one of these courses. That when I run that tool, it crashes. So you might try different terms for crash. If crash isn't getting you what you want, you might add other information about the behavior that's going on when you put that in. But you want to make it brief so that it's not coming up with super unique, specific results, but you also need to be specific enough that you filter out all the other stuff online. And then if you get an error code, it often helps in ArcGIS to put error, then error code, and then the text description. So that bottom one there, ArcGIS 10.3, error 000710. Make sure to put those leading zeros because that's the full error code in ArcGIS. It'll be a better search term. Unable to connect to the server. That's the full description that error code gives you. And that's going to bring up the ArcGIS documentation page for error 000710 and tell me exactly what's going on. Okay, we searched the internet in general. We didn't find a lot. Or maybe we ended up on one of these sites right here. These are really great sites to go to if you need help with GIS. Number one is gis.stackexchange.com. It's a great community with strict rules that allow for really good questions and answers. So you're not going to get just ho-hum, I think it could be this discussion. You're going to get answers, or you're going to find out that nobody who saw that question knew what was going on. They weren't able to answer it. If you're a programmer, you're probably used to Stack Overflow or Server Fault or one of those sites. This is by the same people, Stack Exchange, and it's for GIS in particular. Some of the people who've been in the GIS community for a really long time frequent this site, so you can get help from experts pretty quickly there. Make sure to be clear though, because otherwise they're not going to come help you. GeoNet, the second one, is Esri's community site. That's for posting files. It's for posting questions and getting answers. It's the newest iteration of Esri's forums. So if you have a question, you can also post to GeoNet, and there's some good people helping out there. And then finally, this one's a new addition where I'd say it's really becoming useful, but Reddit is a community website where you have different sections of the site that have different focus points. And they have one on GIS. They have a bunch on different topics related to spatial information, but they have a specific one called Ask GIS. And if you're having trouble in particular, go put it up on one of those two sections. And if you also just have something you want people's input on, you can post it up to one of those and you'll get some ideas back. The other place in this particular case though, is post it to the course forum. So while you're in this course, make sure to use your peers, because if you're having a problem on one of these assignments, it's very likely somebody else is too. And so you guys can really help each other out and save a lot of time by posting it to the course forum. Once you're out of this course, these are the sites you're going to want to go to. Okay, so you're posting a question to one of these sites after you've searched to see if somebody else already had a similar problem and it was solved. What do you put in there? So number one, the biggest thing that's often missing is what you were intending to do and what you expect the results to be. A lot of times people say something's wrong and they're pretty clear in what's going on, but they don't say what they expected back. And so people who aren't experts in that exact thing don't understand enough to help them out. But they may know enough to help them if you said what you expected, because it shows maybe that you had a misunderstanding in what a tool did or something. So make sure to put what you expected the results to be. Make sure, just like with your search terms, include the software and the version number of the software that you're using somewhere in your error report. It's also good a lot of times to include your operating system and the operating system version as well. So, because sometimes there are platform-specific bugs that crop up. Another good thing in line with that is for certain types of problems, and you'll get used to this, you can put it in all of them in the meantime. Post the amount of RAM you have in your system, maybe the free hard disk space, sometimes that's relevant. Any relevant system specifications that might help people solve your problem. And then that ties into the last one of including any other software information on your computer. If you've recently installed things, if you've installed things related to ArcGIS, like geospatial modeling environment, include that you have those, because maybe they're modifying your system. I've had bugs on one system that didn't reproduce on another, and I eventually tied them down to things that were installed by completely unrelated software. It's rare, but if you think it's relevant, put it in the report and just let people solve it with you. Even more. So as best as possible, this is the core of your description. You want to describe the problem you're having in detail. So say exactly what's happening in order. You want to describe that you ran the spatial join tool, you ran it with these inputs, that when it finished running, you got the columns you expected, but that they weren't filled with any data. And then ideally, if you can, include them as steps to reproduce the problem. And then also, if you are able to, in some situations this isn't possible, include a generic way to reproduce this problem. If you can narrow it down to the simplest case that causes that problem to occur and post that for people, they're going to be able to run it, tweak it, and help you out afterward. And then finally, make sure to include the problems you've ruled out and how you ruled them out. Let people know that you've done some debugging, and this really builds a lot of trust and makes people want to help you more, because at that point, they see that you've tried to self-help yourself and that you've just haven't been able to figure it out. And that those reports get a lot of answers. So finally, help yourself as much as you can. You don't always have to go through this exact workflow to get help, but make sure to do anything you can to help yourself, because that's going to enable you to ask a better question of other people, put in better search terms, and know more about your problem and make people want to help you. Be as clear as possible in your problem descriptions, and be nice and friendly and respectful of other people's time. They're there to help you, but they don't have to be there to help you if you're mean. Provide as much detail as you can. Be incredibly clear with your detail and provide steps. And then when people ultimately follow up with questions and clarifications because maybe they need more information to help you, make sure to pay attention to those and respond quickly, because that's how you're going to get your question answered. If you wait a day or two, people may not come back and see your question afterward and try to help you. So that's it. Once you get used to that, when you start using ArcGIS, you'll be able to get help when you run into problems.